Uh, Well, welcome. It gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome you all to today's artist talk by Jennifer Turpin to accompany the exhibition um, Actions from Water, which had a little very timely there, as we say, Actions from Water. My name's Kate Goodwin, and I am on the Tin Sheds Advisory Board. I'm an independent curator and adjunct professor at the University of Sydney. And I'm coming to you today from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, which is also where the location of the Tin Sheds Gallery. And I want to pay my respects to elders past, present, and to acknowledge their ongoing care and sort of and knowledge and the sovereignty that flows through these countries and these countries, especially as we sit here today to think about the waters that sustain, connect, and carry these stories across these unceded lands. It's the Tin Sheds Gallery has its origins in an artist-led workshop space and is now a really vital part of the architecture, design and planning faculty at the University of Sydney. And it provides a space for to interrogate some critical ideas around the built environment, particularly with how they connect with the world around us, intersecting with sort of the social, political, and cultural perspectives. We have today's talk is accompanying, as I said, the exhibition called Actions for Water, which has been curated by the Perth-based artist, curator, Shamila Wood. And it's a brilliant, beautiful exhibition that kind of intertwines artistic practice with ecological advocacy and has, I think, opened up our understanding and alerted us to the really vital role water plays in sustaining life. These talks have included artists who have participated in the show, but also has spanned broader than that to bring more people into this really vital conversation, and has included those people working in activist spaces, those working at the cold face of in a wetlands park. And today I'm delighted to say we have a Sydney-based artist, Jennifer Turpin, who can talk around works here that are in our very close vicinity to the Tin Sheds Gallery. She's been making these site-specific, really striking sculptural works for the past 35 years, and they sit at the interface between art, science, environment, and the community. I think what really stands them apart is exactly this word she's got up here, but how they collaborate with nature's elements, with the water, wind, tide, and sunlight, and become really playful performances and become part of everyday life. Jennifer is a Churchill Fellow. She's adjunct professor at the University of New South Wales School of Biological and Earth Sciences. And for 25 years, she was worked together with the artist Michaelie Crawford in their multi-award-winning collaborative practice, Turpin Crawford Studios. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Jennifer and hopefully, and look forward to seeing this. Please feel free to keep your cameras on if you'd like, or turn them off to concentrate as we go forward. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Kate, for the introduction. Can I just check that everyone can hear me okay? Good, good. Well, I too would like to begin by just saying that we're gathering across screens from here in Sydney on the unceded lands of the First Nations people, and I pay my respects to elders past and present, and also extend respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be joining us today. So thanks so much for inviting me. It's great to be here with you all. And I want to, I'm going to be talking and playing little bits of video and showing you some slides. And I want to begin by just saying that I first started working with water when I was a student. And it's always been important to me, as I realized early on for me as an artist that I wanted to take my cues from nature with all its complexities and infinite connections. And for me, really, art making is about making connections. the unexpected revelatory connections out of which emerge new ways of seeing, hearing, and thinking. Connections of all kinds between ourselves and the world around us, the natural world, the cultural, built world. I'm going to show you some examples of work that I've done with water, both on my own and in collaboration with others. But first, as Kate just mentioned, for 35 years, I've been making site-specific sculptural artworks at the interface of art, science, environment, and community. And many of these works have been in collaboration with my artist colleague, Michaelie Crawford. Collaboration, in fact, has been quite central to our practice. It generates a creative and energetic space of that kind of relationship between. And we've worked with architects, landscape architects, urban designers, developers, industrial designers, curators, scientists, academics, engineers, fabricators, and community. And most of the artworks collaborate with nature's elemental energy. You can see them here on the screen. Such as wind, water, tide, and they become these kind of playful kinetic performances in the everyday lives of our cities. So, as Kate said, the artworks are site responsive and site specific, and the dynamic relationship between people, place, and the natural environment underpins these artworks, most of which are in a constant state of flux. Most of the artworks I'm going to show are kinetic. I'm always interested in engaging in the poetic, informative, and mesmerizing potential of energy and movement, and how that can engage the body, the human body, in its relationship to larger bodies, such as rivers, harbors, oceans. So whether the artworks are permanent or temporary, they're really about inviting empathetic responses and offering ways to connect to the awe and wonder of nature. So I'm going to start with just showing some works that are about that awe and wonder aspect of things, and then I'll move on to a different aspect of working with water. You've been watching some video of the artwork Tide to Tile, which is an artwork down at Piedmont, right on the harbour, and it is a tidal wave and wind activated sculpture that harnesses the very powerful elements of the site, of the water and wind. And Piedmont, it's kind of the last vestiges of a working harbour. And so the visual language has taken something from that kind of marine industrial character. As an artwork, it elucidates the complexities of nature through very, very simple engineering. Hinged to the boardwalk are a series of structures. They're 8 identical structures that create a myriad of responses to tide, wave, and wind action. So it's an artwork that is, in fact, in a constant state of flux. It's constantly changing with the elemental energies that so characterize and define Piedmont Point Park. So you can see here that, every 6 hours, the artwork is moving from one position to another position, quite sort of dramatically. The artwork is, it is literally tied to the tile, and it's combining the nature's elemental forces with the built materials of the site, which are hardwood, timber, and ladders, because there's access ladders in the boardwalk. So we basically took those two elements and created these axes, sort of two axes, one that responds to the water, the timber, and one that responds to the wind, which is the ladders. And together that creates a hybrid structure that's constantly transforming itself. These 8 identical structures provide a sort of a foil for the perpetual flux of nature that's driving them. So here you can see that the ladders are performing a little bit like aquatic acrobats, and the chaos of their movement is as much an unwitting response to passing boats through wave wash as it is a result of the wind and the tide. The movement of this work all starts here under the jetty with the float tanks that are responding up and down. This little drawing shows you how incredibly simple the engineering is. When the tide goes down, the float goes down and the timbers go up, and vice versa. When the tide goes up, the timbers go down. And here is just to show that the ladders, they're kind of impossibly balanced, but they're counterbalanced, and they swing and pivot in the wind. And I suppose they're airborne objects, ladders, that offer a metaphor for journey, inviting collaborations between the natural elements and the imagination. And their movement too is choreographed by passing boats and the wind. And so you may get a kind of Mexican wave wind shape happening if a wind comes in at one end of the site and blows through, and each ladder kind of moves forward progressively. Or if there's no wind, they'll just stand up like soldiers. It's very much an artwork that's linked to nature's elements, and that you experience in the moment that you're standing there watching and feeling it. At another moment, it will be completely different. I just want to go into another, we go back 10 years when I was a student. I just wanted to show you this work because it's another work that for me that's about the awe and wonder of water. And this was an artwork that was like Tide to Tide 10 years later. It was also linked, tied to the tide. I'll show you a little bit of video, but this actually just shows you what's going on. This is Pier 23 down at Walsh Bay, a fabulous building, which in the old days Sydney College of the Arts was given free rein to use this building long before the Biennale took it on. So we were, as students, kind of given free rein. I was really interested in the idea of bringing the context of the site, being the harbour and all of the energy that's going on in the harbour. I wanted to bring that energy into the building because that energy is just underneath the building all the time. So the artwork was about harnessing, like Tide to Tide's about harnessing that energy and bringing it up to this sort of, it's a kind of nutty structure, ladders, cables, tree trunks, an old lift cage from a building that was demolished nearby, and a series of timber ladders that I found upstairs in the building that they hinge together. And the whole thing kind of screeches nervously and tilts to no apparent reason or purpose. Those series of cables, you can just see one coming into vision there. They're connected to a series of pulleys, and then the cable that goes down through the centre of that sort of lift cage there goes down to a float that was counterbalanced with the weight of the ladders above deck, and so that the float was in the water moving up and down, and as it moved up and down, so too did this structure, this kind of machine-like thing. So forces underfoot, you know, the unpredictable movements of small waves under the harborside jib have been harnessed through this system of cables and pulleys to create a new type of movement in the building, in the pier. So what have we got? We've got a kind of series of nostalgic objects that are strung together and powered by one of the sources of energy to which we've long been blind. We're actually accustomed to thinking that a machine divorces us from nature, that this structure gives us a bit of a jolt. You know, you could see them as breathing ladders or tidal furniture. Are we being given an opportunity to rediscover nature through this machine-like form? They were the kind of thoughts that were going through my head when I made that one. And then moving along to another early work of mine, Waterworks 3 was part of a series of artworks with droplets of water, and working with them with sort of gravity and surface tension. This is another example of working with the sort of awe and wonder, I suppose, of water. This is in the art gallery as well. I'll just show you the video. Sorry about the quality of the video, it's kind of old video. But I think you've got an idea of what might be happening. It's the space, this is the vestibule entrance to the gallery, and I really wanted to create something that transformed the architecture of that space by creating a kind of minimalist grotto, if you like, liquefying the air, creating a veil of water that contrasted to the very heavy stone masonry of the architecture, that beautiful, serene neoclassical architecture. The idea was to create a liquid counterpoise and at the same time provide an experience for viewers that was about transforming that space and creating a site that allowed people to enter into an imaginative space. It was really about heightening perception, and it happened in really simple ways. Towards some skills. It created a quite contemplative space, or a place of reverie almost. Essentially, the water was a play of surface tension and gravity, and there's myriads of tiny droplets of water falling very, very slowly and creating noiselessly a strange vertiginous sort of situation, where our perception of water was challenged a little bit. So people kept asking me if the water was going up, and I thought, thinking, and then I slowly realized that your perception of, you expect water to fall straight down with gravity, to make a noise and not to take on much of a shape. And the water in this installation was shifting that slightly. First of all, all the lines of water were slightly off. There was nothing straight or vertical. The water was going very slowly, and it was taking up the shape that the nylon lines were inviting it to take because of surface tension. And it wasn't making any noise. So all your normal expectations were being challenged a bit. And I think that's why people sometimes couldn't be sure of what they were looking at. And I did find that really interesting. I think the important thing about this installation for me was that the water is not so much the subject of the work as it is a vehicle for empathy. And the water it is not so much substance as it is an endless play of light. A little bit like the way you might experience water in the landscape. So that was a really interesting work to work on and to gauge people's responses. So I'm going to fast forward now to 2012 with an artwork that is in Chippendale, not far from the university. Halo is a 12-metre high wind-activated sculpture for Central Park, which used to be a brewery. I'm sure many of you know that. And I'm just going to show you a little bit of video. And I think that you'll be able to see that it's got a kind of movement that, let's turn this up. Sorry, I'll just do that again. You'll see that this is a slightly drunken sculpture for a former brewery. This movement that you're looking at now, the whole form can tilt and rotate, and that was intentional. It's off center, so it's got a precarious kind of balance. So Halo is responding to the winds of the moment. It's turning and tilting with the energy of the wind only. There's no motor or anything. And it's really about celebrating the sheer joy of movement and of the wind. And it's an artwork that was very much designed for this place. The public domain of this park in the centre of the new development that I'm going to show you some. I'm just going to move on to some still images, just to give you a sense of the way that it was conceived. And I mean that image shows you that the movement is eccentric. It's not just turning around. The fulcrum's not in the center, it's off center. And it has a kind of otherworldly presence, I guess, because it's floating and counterbalanced in seemingly. And it plays it has a kind of uncanny motion that plays with your perception. At one time, when it's moving around, you can't see the arm that's connecting it, and and then with certain perspectives, you can double back and see the undulating revolutions of the ring, which can sort of be a little bit mesmerizing at times. So in the planning of this artwork, we wanted to create an energetic heart to the public domain. And as you can see, there was heritage buildings on the left and new buildings in this development surrounding the park. And we wanted to create something that drew you, whose motion kind of drew you inwards to the energetic heart, but also gestured out to all the buildings around it and the public domain underneath it. You may wonder what this has got to do with water. And so I should just remind you that water, air, like water, is a fluid in the kind of realm of physics. But also in this place, when it was functioning as a brewery, going way back, it was sited, the brewery was sited there because there was an original, clean, fresh water supply. And this is the oldest brewery in the colony. It ran continuously for 170 years. And as you can see with Sydney Uni in the background there in the top left, there was a fresh water nearby, and that was part of the reason why the brewery and also a distillery were located in this area. But also, when it was functioning as a brewery, there's an awful lot of fluids, carbonated water, beer, plain water were being pumped around the site. And these pipes are a kind of indication of that incredible energy of fluids that was part of the functioning of the brewery. And so we kind of wanted to pick up on that energy. And then when we first started working on this project, the brewery was still functioning, and they were just in the process of decommissioning the whole thing. And if you see down the bottom, there's these giant rings. They were holding the big fermentation tanks in place, and they became an inspiration to Halo, the later ring. So there is Halo, made of carbon fiber on the factory floor, very lightweight, very strong. And I think the way that Halo moves, a little bit like Tide to Tide, I see them as drawings in space, lines that are being created in response to the natural, sort of moved by natural energies to scribe space in time. I'm going to move on now to talk to you. Actually, I might just talk a little bit about our practice. So the works that I've shown you, you can see that a lot of these works are collaborating with the everyday winds and tides and sunlight. They're choreographed, a lot of them, by nature's predictable and unpredictable energies and rhythms of wind and water and tide, to become these responsive, transformative performances in the everyday life of our city. And I think that these artworks function in the urban environment by creating a nexus between the built form, the natural elements, and the people who inhabit it. In our work, that we're constantly seeking to take ourselves back to the essence of the elemental, of nature, to its intricate, complex, and often invisible energies, and of course to the sheer wonder of this. And we hope to engage people in the temporal experience that you can feel in your body and in your mind when you're engaged through the movement of the sculpture with the environmental energies that are enlivening it, to kind of connect you closer to the place that you and the sculpture share. So the artworks are not fixed. are all complete in themselves. They're always in relation to the environment. And that's why we see them as collaborations with nature rather than representations of nature. The sculptural form mediates natural energy as much as the natural energy activates sculptural form. So the art exists in the interplay between the two. And I want to also say that we've often worked with communities, and when we do that, we're kind of talking about spreading that energy into another realm. I think that these artworks, they kind of breathe alive and breathing, if you like, in the city, and each has its own rhythm. And in each instance, our idea as artists is to engage the senses. Art, in a sense, becomes a tool for summoning environmental connections. So I'd like to move on now to talking about art and environmental water restoration. Because increasingly over the last 20 years, my aim and of my colleague Michaelie Crawford has been, we've been involved in environmental restoration projects where the art actually becomes part of the treatment train of improving a degraded environment, where the art is directly contributing to healing. And many of our artworks have been part of broader environmental restoration projects. Waterfalls is an artwork at Sydney Park. Give you a little bit of this. And some of you may have visited Sydney Park in St. Peters. It's a beautiful park, part of the city of Sydney. And Michaelie and I worked with a fabulous team of landscape architects, Turf Design Studio and Environmental Partnership, and Dragonfly habitat ecologists, and alluvium hydrologists. The project and the City of Sydney, the whole project is a water restoration, a stormwater restoration project. And it's sited, you saw a minute ago an image, I think, of the chimneys in Sydney Park. So Sydney Park used to be a brick making facility. It was a brick pit, and on site were all these wonderful kilns that are heritage buildings and still there. So we actually chose to work with terracotta. You can see these panels here, made of terracotta, as a link to the historic use of art and the fact that place was at one point. So the whole project is it's about taking the water from the streets of Newton and cleaning the water, polishing the water through a vast biofiltration working landscape. In the background right now, see a series of reeds and images that were biologically linked. This gives you a good our channels, which are the channels that we can see in three parts. So this, I won't go into some too much detail. I will say that 30% of the streets comes into
Sorry to interrupt, Jennifer. I think we're just having trouble hearing you. Maybe speak up a little bit, maybe move closer to your microphone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can everybody hear me now? Is that better? Okay, great. Sorry about that. So just to recap, this is part of the whole system of cleansing stormwater, where the water from the streets of Newtown enters the park and makes its way through this distribution channel to the reeds and grasses that you can see in this slide, which naturally, through the roots and mitochondrial systems of these organic plants, the water itself is actually filtered, and then it moves into the pond. It goes down to the lower, and then it gets pumped up to the top wetland, where just to say it comes. This is the top. It enters the water that's partly cleaned, enters this system of the troughs that are the artwork. That's part of the treatment train of the water, because here the water is aerated, which is a step in the process of cleaning the water, and then the water goes down over the stepping stones, over a few falls, and gets right down to the lower level. And so it's in this instance, the art was part of revealing the process. When we first came onto this project, the landscape architects were just going to allow the clean water to enter the upper wetland. And you wouldn't have been, as a member of the public, you wouldn't have actually seen what was going on. So as artists, we said, well, hang on a minute, let's try and make this more visible, this whole fabulous cleaning of the water that's going on. Let's try and increase the legibility of this place as a working wetland. You know, let's make it more obvious for people to be able to see what's happening. So that was the reason for creating these terracotta pipes, half troughs, if you like. So the water that eventually is very clean can be seen to come out of these pipes. So in a sense, the clean water is brought up to the level of visibility, and people can start to read the fact that this is a working landscape. This is an environmental restoration of water that's going on in front of your eyes. So that was a really interesting process, to be collaborating with the designers and just to try and enhance, you know, what they were doing, using the art as a means to connect and tell the story. And we also always like to have a kind of playful thing going on. Here you can see the water is going in two directions. It's a bit of a tease of nature. Some of the water goes forward out of the trough, and some of it goes backwards. It's just something Michaelie and I always like to do. So we also designed the troughs in a way that would provide habitat for birds. We made these little perches with the steel, but of course the birds prefer to just get right on the edge of the channel, and actually sometimes they have a bath inside the channel. So that's just great that we were able to provide something for them. So I'd like to move on to another environmental restoration project with water, And this is going back in time. A project that was a collaboration between Barbara Schaffer and Sue Barnsley, landscape architects, and the Fairfield City Council. And it was a project that was it was about focusing on stormwater and cleaning it and hoping to bring the community along with them. So the memory line was an artwork. It was a temporary art project that was, in a sense, a memorial to a lost ecology, a memorial to a lost waterway that, by the way, is now partly restored. So back then, we created this idea of a memory line. Now, the project started with this, a concrete stormwater channel. These kind of channels are all over Sydney and other metropolitan areas. Stormwater in the 50s, the 40s, 50s, and earlier was often natural creeks were channelized into concrete. And it was a sort of engineering expediency to get water out and away into the rivers and harbours to stop causing flooding or other issues. And the project is called Restoring the Waters, and it aimed in a sense to restore this place, which is called Clear Paddock Creek. But the creek was no longer, it was just a concrete channel. The idea was to restore it back to the meandering creek that it had once been before it was cauterized in concrete in the 1960s. So the memory line was a 3 kilometre long band of ryegrass that was planted, taking the course of that the original creek had taken. And it became a symbol of imagining the future, a future restored creek. And it became a line that sort of threaded its way, a thread, I guess, between the destroyed past and a rehabilitated future. So sadly, for many people, this is their idea of a creek. And this, I'm sure you've all experienced this, when something disappears, a kind of cultural amnesia sets in. So when the natural creek disappeared and the concrete channel was replaced, they replaced it, people forgot about the natural creek, and then new people came and they didn't even know there'd been a creek there in the first place. Somehow the creek, the channel became natural. Now, this response is symptomatic of a broader collective memory loss that happens as the natural environment is displaced by ever-increasing urban sprawl, as we all know. But the Fairfield City Council back in the late 90s sought to restore the natural creek along with the whole biological diversity and wildlife habitats, based on the principle that such a system was in fact a superior way of managing both the quantity and the quality of stormwater. Because as you can imagine, with a concrete channel, stormwater that runs into that, it's polluted, comes off the streets, it's polluted, and it goes straight into the rivers and bays, unchecked, unfiltered. So it's not dealing at all with the kind of pollution that happens on the runoff of water on our roads. So here's the sort of storyline. On the left, you have the concrete channel, and then you have the artwork, the memory line, which was really about this idea of remembering the creek's past in order to be able to imagine its future. And then the future starts when the concrete was dug up and a more or less natural system was reinstated. And it was a beautiful thing to have seen this transformation, because today this is what you've got. you know, the ducks and the birds and the wildlife has returned to a place that was once just concrete and grass. The memory line it became this growing line on site when we were, and a lot of people became involved in spraying the line, grading the line, planting it, and then it grew up. You know, it became golden. Eventually, it was harvested. You know, it had to cross roads wherever the original creek went. That's where the memory line went, and we were lucky to have been able to mark it out because, based on aerial photographs that were taken of the creek before it was channelized in concrete. So we were lucky to have those drawings. And then we ran a whole festival working with the community to try and focus, particularly with kids, focusing everybody's attention on the importance of water in their lives. And so students made artworks and we exhibited it in a big festival of the waters. The memory line was inaugurated at that time, and a variety of projects that we worked on with community were celebrated. And perhaps one of the works, the bottom right and the bottom left, is a work called In the Stream, which was made by 500 primary school children. And it was the idea of making and igniting the imagination of the children, who made cutouts of fish and frogs and butterflies and all the creatures that the habitat ecologists and others reminded us would return once the creek was restored to its natural way of being. So this was about imagining, and it was about giving people a sort of hope of what could be recovered and reinstated. So the memory line project, in this project, nature was far from being kind of out there somewhere else. The idea was that nature resided in the backyard, in your backyards, in the backyards of suburban culture. And the art project sought to creatively elaborate on the relationship rather than the schism between the cultures of nature and suburbia, so as to explore and celebrate the possibilities of the, I guess, eclectic nature of our contemporary urban ecologies. And so the memory line itself, whilst it was marking in a very real way the line of the original creek, it was also about the poetics of place, because as it sprawled across the entire length of the landscape, incised by the canal, which you can see in the distance, its meandering form suggests a journey, an intimate movement through a broad landscape where the wind through the grass could create an empathetic reverie in the mind. It was an ephemeral work, but exists in people's memories. And now the restored creek, or partially restored creek, is there for everybody to enjoy. Are we going for time? You okay for time? So I have another project, which is another example of stormwater restoration. This is at Victoria Park in Zetland in Sydney. And it was an artwork that this whole environment is a detention basin, which some of you may know is all about detaining the 1 in 200 year storm event, where the water fills up then it slowly subsides. This is actually in the Botany Sands part of Sydney, so that in such an event, the water would slowly seep down. And as artists, we were very much aware of the function of this park as a detention base. And our idea was to create artwork with stormwater that heightened that sense of the recessed kind of quality of the park itself by creating these staircases on either side of the park where water was moving. Now, the water itself is water that has been harvested, again through bioretention swales on the streets running east-west. That water goes under the park, where it's further treated without using any chemicals in an electromagnetic system that we set up. And then it's brought up to the surface to run over the stairs, the water stairs, where it's aerated. So a little bit like Sydney Park, the artwork has a function, environmental function, in cleaning and helping polish the water and bring it up to a good quality of water, so that it can then be ultimately let out into Alexandra Canal nearby. There's no chemicals involved because it's going back into a natural system. So it's demonstrating and providing, it's demonstrating a function, an environmental function, if you like, the artwork, and also providing an amenity for people and other creatures in the park. You can see that the shape, it's made from concrete, and it was a little bit like origami. We designed the concrete so that it was folded and bends, and the water actually goes downhill. The water actually moves down the slope at a 45 degrees angle. I mentioned that Michaelie and I like playing with sort of creating a tease of nature. So water normally goes straight down, but we incrementally adjusted each stair so that the water would go sideways down the slope, just to create an intriguing sense of water and just a playful way of I guess just kind of playing with what nature does naturally. I think the important thing to say is that the reason for citing these artworks in the sloped embankments of the park, as I mentioned earlier, was about reinforcing the fact that the park has this environmental function as a detention basin. But it's also about the idea of the drama of the storm event. You can see the 45-degree angle there, by the way. So we called this artwork Storm Waters because conceptually it's about imagining the potential of a dramatic storm that could potentially fill that entire park with water. Just a few images just to show you the way people interact. I'm not sure if we've got the time for one more project.
Let's do it quickly. I'm loving these projects. I guess
Okay.
people can leave if they need to. We'll understand. But I think if you've got one there, I think it probably adds something lovely. So let's keep it on, and we can keep the recording if we're okay. Shamila might need to leave, but we're here enjoying it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kate. So I'd like to finish with this project, and now we're moving to ocean water. This is a project. The Seaweed Arboretum was part of the Manly Seaweed Forest Festival, which has been the result of an ongoing collaboration between my studio and marine ecologists at the University of New South Wales, and who have been involved in a raft of environmental restoration projects to do with seaweed. One of them is called Operation Crayweed, which is about restoring a fabulous and foundational species of seaweed in Sydney's coastal waters. There are other projects that they're doing, restoring seagrass, creating hotels for sea dragons, seahorses, and a number of other projects that these scientists are doing remarkable work trying to improve the health of our marine environment. So we as artists got involved in creating a series of artworks that were together called the Seaweed Arboretum. And the Seaweed Arboretum was the 3 rooms in the Manly Gallery that were devoted to, well, as you know, an arboretum is is a place where a variety of species of plants are displayed, and ours was a seaweed arboretum, so you get to see a whole lot of different species of seaweed. And the project as a whole was devoted to the seaweed kelp forests of Australia's Great Southern Reef, which is the little known reef that wraps its way around the entire bottom of Australia. It's 8,000 kilometres long, so it's like 4 times the length of the Great Barrier Reef. It doesn't have corals, but it has seaweed, a rocky environment with seaweed, and it's a hotspot of biodiversity. So we created a series of rooms. This one's called Forest, where, in a sense, the seaweed was being displayed in a way, and it's in a way that it reminded you of how it was in nature, although in an artful kind of way. The exhibition of the Seaweed of the Forest Festival was a project that it was really this whole idea of the intersection of art and science and community, and with the investigative knowledge of science and the poetic expression of art interwove to immerse viewers in the beauty and the wonder and the critical importance of seaweed and seaweed forests. Michaelie and I really wanted to engage directly with seaweed, and to display it in a way that created a dialogue between ourselves and aspects of nature. And so in the 3 rooms that I'll show you, there's a sort of dialogue between the seaweed, their water memories, and light. So Forest, this one, so together, the 3 rooms are really the outcome of a journey of transformation of the seaweed from ocean seabed to terra firma gallery. And we collected, we dried, we sort of sculpted, we pressed the work, we pressed the seaweeds, and the variety of species from different parts of New South Wales and South Australia, basically the area of the Great Southern Reef. And the Seaweed Arboretum is a presentation of these marine plants as more or less as they are, just gently sculpted into forms that express their inherent characteristics and their exquisite structures, and sometimes very surprising sort of forms. So this was forest. And you can see that we had a light that was moving. So the shadows of the sculptures of the seaweed was kind of moving around the room, trying to invoke the movement of seaweed in its natural state. And then you'd move into another room, which was called Flora, where a variety of pressed seaweed were installed in a way that their shadow became an important part of the display. That was all about just trying to remember that fluid origin of the seaweed, to create a sort of sense of movement and light through the shadow. And some of these beautiful seaweeds, they're you know, just incredible, incredible structures, incredible organisms. Some of them extremely dense, and some just incredibly, incredibly fine. Very, very beautiful. And then there was another room where a series of floating seaweeds were counterbalanced with bags of manly seawater, and they were moving gently in the movement of the air with a fan. The artwork really became the habitat for 4 weeks of events where everything seaweed was discussed. We ran workshops about drawing seaweed shadows. There were workshops by chefs about seaweed and food. We covered seaweed and dance. A beautiful performance was choreographed, especially, and performed underneath the wool kilt. A whole series of talks with different focuses and different people participating in panels. Awe and wonder, seaweed as food and nutrition. Seaweed that was a brilliant electric session with Tim Flannery, a climate scientist, on seaweed, victim and unlikely hero in the fight against climate change, and some extraordinary innovators on that panel who are working with seaweed to restore environments and capture carbon. There was some very, very vital discussions. So the art was kind of providing the habitat for all of this, these ideas and thoughts that were being thrown around over a period of 4 weeks. And the scientists involved in all the restoration projects were there to talk about their stewardship and restoration projects. And wonderful Indigenous contribution to our understanding and uses of seaweed over a great deal of time. So just to finish up, to say that art, I mean, I guess in this project, art and science can illuminate the complexities and interrelationships and the beauties and wonder of the world that we share with other plants and animals. And I guess in our age of human-induced climate change, science and technology can provide the critical knowledge underpinning our need to respond effectively. And art has the potential to play a really powerful role in positively transforming our relationship to the environment. So I hope that just seeing some of these artworks might give you that idea that art and design, you know, can have a really important role in changing our ideas about the potential for rejuvenating, regenerating, and healing our natural world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jennifer. And that was a really beautiful summary too. And I think bringing us from outside back into the gallery too. And as you said, which is what this exhibition Actions from Water does do. It brings those scientists to have these critical conversations, because as you say, we need to have them, and having them in, and finding the places to do it. And I think in sort of cultural institutions is a really important way, isn't it, to start to shift kind of mindset and paradigm shift, that we actually start to care. And there was some words that the Underfoot Collective spoke to us about a couple of days ago, and one of their works too is they said, you know, you can't love something you don't see. It's that thing, and actually what you're doing is making these things visible, so we do have a connection with it. And it came across all of those works, and actually it was really lovely. I mean, knowing your work and seeing some of those really early archival works, we had some comments loving, you know, the Pier 2 and 3, and you guys going wild as SCA students. It's a really lovely project, and seeing how they go out into the urban environment and at the sort of scale you're working at, I think is really important. Just had one question, which I guess furthers some of that thinking, just is when, you know, the role, there's one thing, as you say, it's making these things that are happening visible and giving people sort of connectivity to start to create empathy, and as a result then to make change. I'm wondering, like, even going up in the process, what role do you think an artist might have in conversations around urban planning or design or shaping our environments, particularly when it relates to water, and these sensibilities that you bring up or ways of seeing that might inform in the conception of it before a work's even there, but actually even kind of how we think about how we might plan our environments or think around water, or that, you know, at that kind of level?
That's a great question. And I have been involved on a number of the sort of planning projects for some of the big urban projects, like, you know, Barangaroo and other projects that involve some in Western Sydney. And the planning, I guess I think that artists can have a role in the planning stage, because you know, there's that whole thing about how art can be the conscience of society. Sometimes I think artists can say things that and be heard when other designers or professionals may not be able to say them, or if they do, they may not necessarily be heard. I think there's something that I'm not saying that artists are special people. I'm just saying that the role of art and the way that people perceive the role of art in our societies affords the opportunity to be soulful, to speak of things that are about connectivity, and about important about the important things in life that are to do with, you know, maintaining our connection to our environment, to caring about it. And I think artists can have a voice in those early stages by just raising alarm bells, or just reminding people that that connecting to what is there. I mean, the whole connecting with country is so critical, and I think artists, Indigenous and non-Indigenous artists, can really help reinforce why that connection to country is so important by, you know, running workshops, suggesting artworks that might work with community to build the sort of bridges and expectation for healthy planning. I suppose I'm speaking a bit sort of around about on this, but I think that people, I think once people have an experience of what is possible through art, they might they then become a little bit more open to listening and hearing. So I think there is a role for artists who are interested in getting involved at that planning stages. I think that it's it's always important to hear from different voices, and I think that artists can help bring a diversity of people together. You know, it may just be in the community consultation arena. But
yeah. I think it is. I'm a big advocate of it, and I actually do think that artists are special people. But I think, there's something about this idea of love, care, and criticality, and needing to see outside of what we can see in front of us and imagine something else. And I think it's very striking. Your works do bring the poetic into place. And thinking about a couple of the works, I think Sydney Park is in some ways very subtle. People might go, "Oh, that's art," but what you do is you highlight what's there and it brings it out, and you kind of have a response and a feeling to something, which I think is really special. So thank you so much for taking the time to share this work with us. I think it's a really great compliment to the show that Shamila has put together. Because you can see the exhibition and then go outside and experience your works and see how they start to kind of change how we experience the world around us, and the importance of these natural systems and co-collaborators that we need to really look after, restore, as you say. It's, we are in a state of crisis, and we need radical change, and I think artists can bring about radical change, as you've shown us. So thank you so much for your time and sharing us, and thank you to everybody who has joined us. There's lots of, I think we might have lost a couple of people there, Jennifer, but there was loads of very appreciative comments in the chat, and I'm sure those online will enjoy listening this to come. So for everybody, please check out our other talks. That there's a whole series of them next week as well. If you missed any, they're all online on the Tin Sheds Gallery website. So thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to everybody, and to Shamila for this brilliant series and exhibition. Thanks.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Kate, very much.